Hey there! We've curated an engaging story for you. If you are enjoying it, remember to hit that subscribe button to show your support. Let's dive into the narrative. Opie begins by introducing themselves as Ethan in a forum where they have been a silent observer. They share their personal experience of feeling like an outsider in their own family. Growing up, Ethan's parents, Mark and Linda, clearly favored their younger brother Ryan, showering him with love and attention, while overlooking Ethan's needs and achievements. This unequal treatment left Ethan feeling neglected and unsupported. Despite this, Ethan persevered and eventually found success, gaining wealth along the way. Upon discovering Ethan's newfound prosperity, Mark and Linda reach out to reconcile and reconnect. Ethan is now confronted with a decision on how to navigate this unexpected turn of events. Let's explore the dynamics between Wei and me. While I remained in the background, barely receiving the attention necessary for survival, Ryan exuded a magnetic energy that drew everyone to him. He was always talking, always smiling, effortlessly captivating those around him. In contrast, I gravitated towards solitude, finding solace in books, drawing, and small projects in my room. This led my parents to treat Ryan like a prodigy while I felt overlooked and unimportant. The disparity in treatment gradually became more apparent. Initially, it seemed justified that Ryan, being younger, received more toys. However, this trend continued into our older years, highlighting the favoritism towards him as the star and relegating me to being just the other kid. This pattern of unequal treatment was exemplified by the stark contrast in our birthdays. While Ryan enjoyed lavish parties and expensive gifts, my celebrations paled in comparison. In my family, birthday celebrations often consisted of just a cake and a quick happy birthday, before shifting the focus back to discussing Ryan's latest accomplishments. I distinctly recall one year when I asked for a new art set only to receive a pack of pens from the dollar store instead. Meanwhile, Ryan received a brand new bike for his birthday that same year. However, it wasn't just about the tangible gifts. The emotional neglect I experienced was even more painful. For example, when I proudly showed my mom my straight A's on my middle school report card, hoping for some recognition, all she offered was a casual "that's nice," before turning her attention back to gushing over Ryan's recent basketball game. Despite the fact that Ryan wasn't particularly skilled at basketball, his meager 2 points in a middle school game somehow seemed more exciting to them than my academic achievements. This pattern repeated itself regularly. If Ryan showed an interest in something, our parents went all out to support him, buying him gear, enrolling him in lessons, and attending every game. In contrast, when I expressed interest in something, it felt like I was met with a void. Teeth need proper care to keep them healthy. A while back, I shared my enthusiasm about starting a small online shop to sell handmade crafts with my family. I had saved up diligently and only required a bit of extra funds to purchase supplies. However, my dad dismissed my idea, advising me to concentrate on more practical pursuits. Yet when my brother Ryan expressed his desire to establish a fitness gear brand, a few months later, my parents readily supported him. They assisted him in acquiring equipment, funding a professional website, and even hiring a graphic designer for his logo. Witnessing this preferential treatment made me wonder why Ryan effortlessly received so much support, while I felt I had to struggle for every opportunity. As I progressed through high school, I resigned myself to not expecting much from my parents. Ryan remained their top priority, and I felt like a mere presence in the household. Their intense focus on Ryan's success blinded them to my gradual detachment. Meanwhile, Ryan reveled in the spotlight, displaying a conceited demeanor that conveyed his sense of entitlement. Every time I got new shoes, he'd mock me with comments like finally upgrading from those hand-me-downs. In conversations, he would continually redirect the focus back to himself, making me feel out of place and humiliated in my own family. Despite my discomfort, my parents never addressed E's behavior, dismissing my concerns as oversensitivity or mere joking on his part. A particularly hurtful incident from my senior year of high school still lingers in my memory. After winning first place in a regional small business competition and excitedly sharing the news with my parents, my dad's response was a lukewarm acknowledgement, diverting the conversation to praise Ryan's recent achievements. My mom didn't even bother to look up from her phone. Feeling dejected, I retreated to my room, the weight of their indifference weighing heavily on me. At night, tears flowed down my cheeks. It wasn't for their approval that I wept, but for the realization that it would never be granted. In that moment, I resolved to break free from the suffocating environment I was trapped in. Living in a household where I was consistently disregarded and unappreciated was no longer sustainable. Upon deciding to depart as soon as I finished school, I began strategizing my escape. However, the road ahead was fraught with challenges. My parents had invested significantly in my brother Ryan's business, leaving little resources for me. When I expressed my desire to move out and pursue my own entrepreneurial aspirations, they dismissed my aspirations outright. My father's words pierced my heart. "We can't stretch ourselves too thin. Ryan's business is the future of our family." It was a harsh awakening. My dreams and ambitions were eclipsed by their unwavering support for Ryan. This revelation made it clear that I could not depend on them. If I sought a brighter future, I had to forge my path alone without their assistance. And so that's precisely what I did. Faced with the turmoil of my teenage years and my parents' evident favoritism, I knew that remaining was no longer an option. My faith in my family dwindled even further when they invested a significant amount of money into Ryan's ill-conceived business venture, completely ignoring my ideas. It was the moment that pushed me over the edge. I made a firm decision that I wouldn't rely on anyone to provide me with an opportunity. Instead, I would create one for myself. However, having experienced a lifetime of being overlooked and underestimated, I knew the importance of secrecy when it came to my plans. I wasn't willing to divulge my aspirations of starting my own business to my parents, especially considering their dismissive attitude towards me. So I went incognito. My initial move involved diligent saving of every penny I could get my hands on. I took on various part-time jobs after school, which included tutoring, babysitting, and even some freelance assignments online. I'd fabricate tales for my parents about volunteering at the library or studying at a friend's place to avoid arousing suspicion. They rarely probed, further likely preoccupied with monitoring Ryan's every move. With the funds I managed to accumulate, I embarked on a self-taught crash course in business operations. Late nights were spent watching tutorials and immersing myself in topics such as marketing, web design, and various other essential skills needed for entrepreneurship. Product sourcing may not have been glamorous for me as I operated out of my cramped bedroom, hastily concealing my laptop screen whenever someone entered. Despite feeling like I was engaging in covert operations, the process was genuinely invigorating. It marked the first time I was pursuing something that truly belonged to me. My concept was straightforward: curate custom-designed products, such as mugs, tote bags, and stationery, tailored to niche markets. While it wasn't groundbreaking, I held steadfast belief in its potential. I delved into trend analysis, crafted mock-ups, and secured a cooperative supplier willing to accommodate my limited budget. The moment I secured my initial sale, a mere $15 for a personalized mug, nearly brought me to tears. Although the sum was modest, it felt akin to winning the jackpot, an affirmation that someone out there appreciated my creations. In contrast, Ryan's business was undergoing a tumultuous decline. Following lackluster meetings with his team, primarily comprised of friends more inclined to socialize than work, he lamented the arduous task of securing clients upon returning home. Rather than holding him responsible, my parents opted to inject additional funds into his venture. They paid for new equipment, a marketing consultant, and even rented a small office space for him. I overheard my dad once say, "Don't worry, Ryan, these things take time. You're building something big here." It took everything in me not to laugh. Ryan barely lifted a finger, yet my parents treated him like he was the next Steve Jobs. While Ryan was squandering their resources, I was quietly scaling up my little operation. My online shop started gaining traction thanks to some clever social media marketing and word of mouth. I'd post on forums and groups where my target audience hung out, subtly plugging my products without coming across as pushy. Slowly but surely, orders started coming in. By the time I graduated high school, I was making enough to support myself. I didn't tell my parents, of course. They assumed I was still just figuring things out. When I told them I wanted to move out, they barely blinked. My dad said something like, "Good for you. Maybe you can help Ryan with his business now." I refrained from reacting impulsively and instead maintained a smile, agreeing with my father's suggestion. Little did my family know that my decision to move out wasn't solely to assist Ryan or to remain close to home. I had secured a modest office space in another state, far enough away to prevent unexpected visits. Although it was a simple room with peeling wallpaper and a creaky chair, it was my sanctuary. I finalized the lease right after graduation, and it marked a newfound sense of freedom for me. Setting up my office brought immense joy. I spent days arranging furniture, setting up my computer, and organizing inventory. Despite moments of doubt, I cherished every aspect of the process. Expanding my product line was one of my initial priorities post-move. I successfully introduced personalized notebooks and planners, which received an overwhelming response. Additionally, I began providing custom designs for bulk orders, catering to corporate gifting needs. For wedding favors, the business grew faster than I expected. Within a year, I was making enough to hire a part-time assistant to help with packing and shipping. By the second year, I had upgraded to a larger office and brought on 2 more team members. Meanwhile, my parents still thought I was working a side job and occasionally helping Ryan. They didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer any. It was almost funny how little they cared about what I was actually doing. Ryan, on the other hand, was struggling more than ever. His business had completely tanked. The office my parents rented for him was empty most days, and his website hadn't been updated in months. My dad still tried to prop him up, saying things like these are just growing pains, but even he was starting to sound tired. By the time I hit my 3rd year in business, I was making more money than I ever thought possible. I had multiple revenue streams, a loyal customer base, and even a few partnerships with local retailers. I didn't just feel successful. I felt vindicated. All those years of being overlooked and underestimated had led to this moment. My parents had put all their faith in Ryan, and he had let them down. Meanwhile, I had built something from nothing all on my own. But the funny thing was, they still didn't notice. I'd come home for the occasional holiday dinner, and my dad would always ask, "So Ethan, when are you going to get serious about your career?" I wanted to laugh in his face. Instead, I'd just say, "I'm working on it, Dad," and leave it at that. Little did they know I wasn't just working on it, I was thriving. I was sitting in my office one morning scrolling through emails and planning out my next product launch when my phone buzzed. I don't usually answer calls from unknown numbers, but something about this one made me pick up. "Hey Ethan, it's Dad." I froze for a moment. My dad doesn't call me often. Hell, he barely calls me at all, unless there's some sort of favor he needs. I leaned back in my chair and said, "Hey Dad, what's up?" After an awkward pause, my dad began speaking. "Your brother Ryan has come up with another business idea, and we're all supporting him to get started again." Hearing this made my stomach twist, not with anger, but with a sense of disappointment that I had carried since childhood. "Okay," I replied, cautiously bracing myself for the inevitable request. Dad went on, "We all thought it would be great if you could come home for a family meeting to brainstorm and help Ryan kickstart this new venture." And there it was, the real reason for the call. I couldn't help but laugh. "You want me to help Ryan with another business idea?" My dad insisted. "Don't laugh, Ethan. He's learned a lot since the last one, and family should stick together during times like this." Leaning forward on my desk, I asked Dad with all due respect, "Why would I do that? You've never once asked me for help before." I could almost hear him sigh as he responded, and I imagined him massaging his temples through the phone. "Ethan, it's not only about Ryan. It's also about the family's reputation. There is talk circulating, and people are beginning to question why Ryan is struggling to find success. By uniting as a family, we can support him in turning things around and silencing the critics." It dawned on me that this situation wasn't purely about family or Ryan. Rather, it was about maintaining appearances as always. My parents' reluctance to assist Ryan stemmed not from their belief in him, but from the fear of looking bad in front of their peers. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said, attempting to keep my tone composed. "I have my own business to manage. I cannot afford to be Ryan's cheerleader." However, this led to a guilt-inducing tirade. My dad launched into a speech about their sacrifices, the challenges of raising 2 sons, and the expectation of gratitude for everything they had done. I remained silent as he rambled on. When he eventually paused, I calmly stated, "I won't be returning home, Dad. I have a lot on my plate." The line fell silent for a moment, and then he replied with, "If you don't come, we'll stop supporting you financially." I almost laughed again. "Dad, I haven't needed your money in years. Stop pretending like you've been supporting me." There was a long pause. What's that supposed to mean? It was petty, but I couldn't resist. It means I've been running my own business for the past few years. I'm doing fine without your help. I could hear the disbelief in his voice. You're joking. I'm not. I've got a thriving business, Dad. I'm making more than enough to take care of myself. So no, I won't be coming home to help Ryan. There was a long silence, and then he hung up without another word. I thought that was the end of it, but of course it wasn't. The next day, my mom called. Ethan, sweetheart, we need to talk. Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but I knew better than to fall for it. What do you need, Mom? She sighed dramatically. It's about Ryan. He's been so stressed lately, and your father and I are worried about him. We think it would mean a lot to him if you came home and supported. I fought back the urge to respond angrily to my mom's pleas, as she reminded me of the importance of family despite feeling no sympathy for my brother's constant need for bailouts. For years, I had sought their approval and support, but now that I had established my independence, they wanted me to resume the role of the dutiful son. Refusing to continue playing second fiddle, I asserted my stance firmly to my mom, emphasizing that I would not prioritize my brother's needs over my own well-being. Ignoring her protests, I ended the call, unable to continue catering to their demands. However, the barrage of accusatory voicemails from my dad continued in the following days, labeling me as selfish and ungrateful. Mom's lengthy texts were filled with messages about the significance of family and how my actions were causing her immense sadness. I chose to overlook her messages, but something unexpected occurred. An old high school friend reached out to inform me that my dad had made inquiries about me. It turns out he had visited the local college, where I was supposedly studying, only to discover that I wasn't enrolled there. Upon this revelation, he reacted by losing his temper. I could only imagine the shock on his face as he realized I had been deceiving him for quite some time. Shortly after this incident, my dad called me in a fit of anger. How have you utilized the money we sent for your tuition? He demanded. I couldn't help but chuckle. I used it to establish my business, Dad. Thank you for the initial funding. His response was filled with accusations. You deceived us. Do you comprehend how humiliating this is for our family? I retorted defiantly. Who? You, Ian? I am managing just fine. Despite his attempts to preach about the importance of trust and respect, I interrupted him. You want to talk about trust? Where was that when I needed? As I was working hard to achieve success, you failed to acknowledge my efforts. He abruptly ended the call, leaving things unresolved. Upset by the situation, my parents are angry. Ryan may be upset, and I find myself finally experiencing a sense of liberation. I had hoped that the turmoil following my conversation with Dad about my business and independence would settle down, but instead it only intensified. A few days later, my mom unexpectedly visited my office as I was finishing a meeting with a team member in the late afternoon. When the receptionist informed me that a woman claiming to be my mom was waiting, I was taken aback. My mother had never shown much interest in my life, so her presence outside my office seemed surreal. I allowed her to come in, concerned
Mom
that she
entered,
might
seemingly
amazed by her surroundings, pausing mid-sentence. She let out a dramatic sigh, as if inconvenienced by the situation. I wanted to talk to you in person. You've been avoiding my calls, and your father and I are concerned about you, I said, leaning back in my chair and crossing my arms. You're worried about me now? I asked, my patience wearing thin. She tried to sound sweet, saying, don't be like that, Ethan. We're family. Families argue sometimes, but we need to stick together. I felt a sense of disbelief at her words. Is that why you're here? To guilt trip me into coming home and pretending everything is fine? I challenged. Her expression briefly changed before she composed herself. No, I'm here because we want to make things right. Your father and I realize we may have neglected you while focusing on Ryan all these years. We want to make amends, she claimed. I wasn't convinced. Make amends? How exactly? By pretending the last 20 years never happened. Some years were a blur. Her eyes skittered around the room, avoiding meeting mine. We just want to be there for you now, Ethan. You've clearly made something of yourself, and we're proud of you, I scoffed at her words. Proud? You didn't even know what I was up to until a week ago. You didn't care when I needed you, and now suddenly you want to play the supportive parents. Why now? Because Ryan's business tanked, and you need someone to bail you out? Her face turned a deep shade of red. That's not fair. We've always had a place for you in our hearts. Stop, I cut in sharply, my tone laced with frustration. Let's not rewrite history. You're only here because you're in a tough spot, not out of genuine concern. So why don't you drop the act and tell me what you really came for?" She hesitated, fingers nervously toying with the strap of her purse. "Eventually, she spoke. Your father and I are facing some financial difficulties. Ryan's latest venture hit us harder than we anticipated, and well, we were hoping you could help us out to get back on track." I let out a bitter laugh. Of course, it all boils down to money. It's never just about money. "Yes," she replied swiftly. "We are eager to mend our relationship with you as well. This could mark a fresh beginning for all of us." I gazed at her, contemplating whether she truly believed her words or if she was attempting to manipulate me. "You spent years neglecting me, disregarding me, and now you wish for a new start because you're in financial distress. That's not how it works, Mom. I won't be your safety net." Her face hardened. "Ethan, we are your parents. We have supported you in numerous ways over the years." "No," I retorted sharply. "You supported Ryan, not me. Don't act like you were supportive parents when you rarely even asked about my well-being. I don't owe you anything." She rose abruptly, causing her chair to screech against the floor. "You're being selfish. We are still your family, whether you accept it or not." "You are my family, but you treated me as if I were invisible," I fired back. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to attend to." She exited without uttering another word, slamming the door behind her. I thought that was the end. But of course my parents weren't done. A few days later, I got another surprise visitor. Ryan. He showed up at my office, looking like a mess. Unshaven, disheveled, and desperate. I almost didn't recognize him. "Ethan," he said as he walked in. "Can we talk?" I sighed, leaning against my desk. "What do you want, Ryan?" He sat down heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Man, I know things haven't been great between us, but I really need your help right now." I raised an eyebrow. "Think I can fix everything?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I don't know. I need someone to have my back, please, Ethan." I shook my head. "You've got some nerve coming to me after everything. You bullied me, Ryan. You treated me like crap while Mom and Dad cheered you on, and now you want me to save you." "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I was an idiot back then. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you." "Too little, too late," I said firmly. "I've moved on, Ryan. I built a life for myself without any of you. I'm not going to let you drag me back into the mess you created." He sat there for a moment, his shoulders slumped before standing up. "I guess I deserve that," he said, "but for what it's worth, I really am sorry." I didn't say anything as he walked out the door. Since then, I haven't heard from any of them. My phone's been blissfully silent, and I've been focusing on my business and my life. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control. I thought I'd seen it all after my parents and Ryan tried to guilt-trip me. I was hoping to put their drama behind me and move forward with my life. But just when I thought I could, life threw one last curveball my way. A month after Ryan's desperate visit, a letter from my mom arrived in the mail. Not an email or a text, but an actual letter. It had been a while since anyone had written to me, so I was curious to see what it said. The handwriting was familiar, my mom's. The letter was long and difficult to read in some places due to tear stains on the page. My mom expressed how much she and my dad missed me, regretted everything that had happened, and professed their love for me. However, as I read further, it became clear that things at home had worsened. The house they had lived in for decades was gone. My parents had invested heavily in Ryan's businesses, resulting in financial ruin when the last one failed. They had been evicted from their home. It had been 2 weeks since Ryan, the favored child, had left us, and now we were residing in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of town. He had deserted us, taking whatever little money he had and relocating to a friend's place 2 states away, completely ignoring our attempts to reach out to him. This abandonment had ignited a rage in my parents, particularly my mom, who expressed disbelief at Ryan's actions, despite all the sacrifices they had made for him. It was a bitter twist of fate. They had always prioritized Ryan, showering him with affection, aid, and resources, only to be left alone in their time of need. On the contrary, the son they had overlooked, labeling him as too delicate or lacking in ambition, was the one who remained by their side. Within the letter, there was a desperate plea from my mother for my return, for forgiveness, and for assistance in rebuilding their shattered lives. She admitted they had no one else to lean on, claiming they had learned from their mistakes and desired to make amends. As I read those words, I sat in silence, torn between disbelief and a glimmer of hope for reconciliation. If I wanted to be the bigger person to go back and try to fix what was left of our family, then they were still my parents. Despite everything they'd done or hadn't done, I couldn't completely shut off the part of me that craved their love and acceptance. But then I thought about all the years I spent waiting for them to care about me. All the birthdays and holidays, where I was an afterthought, all the times they made it clear that Ryan was their priority, and I was just the background character in their perfect little family narrative. I couldn't go back. A few weeks after I got the letter, I heard from my aunt, the only extended family member I still kept in touch with. She called me out of the blue, her voice low and hesitant. "Ethan, I don't know if you've heard, but your parents are in real trouble." I figured, I said, not bothering to hide my lack of sympathy. "They lost the house," she continued, "but it's worse than that." I faced a difficult situation as my parents were entangled in a lawsuit facing potential dire consequences if they lost. The news weighed heavily on me, prompting me to question my role in this predicament. A friend reached out to inform me about the lawsuit, acknowledging that while I didn't owe my parents anything due to their past mistreatment, they were still family. Grateful for her concern, I pondered on the intricate web of emotions surrounding my parents' flawed nature. Despite their imperfections, I recognized their humanity and the need for closure in this tumultuous chapter. That night, my mind whirled with conflicting thoughts about how to navigate this challenging situation. While I was clear that I wouldn't rescue them from the repercussions of their actions or enable their destructive behavior, I resolved to offer them closure. The following day, I mustered the courage to call my mother, bracing myself for the emotional exchange that awaited me. As she answered the call, her voice quivered with a mix of relief and apprehension. "Ethan, is that you?" she uttered in a trembling tone. "Yes, it's me," I replied calmly. "I just wanted to." During our conversation, she began to speak with real guttural sobs, which made me uncomfortable. After collecting herself, she said, "Ethan, I'm deeply sorry for everything, for how we treated you. You didn't deserve any of it." I realized that now. I thanked her for the apology, but emphasized that it couldn't change the past. She sniffled and admitted, "I just don't know how to make things right." My response was direct: "You can't fix it. It's too late for that. But you can learn from it." She quickly assured me, "We're willing to put in the effort to make things right, Ethan. We'll prove it to you." I remained reserved, acknowledging, "Take care of yourselves. That's all I can say for now." As we ended the call, I felt a strange sense of peace, knowing that I now had control over my family relationships. I had declared my separation from my parents and their tumultuous situations, but life has a skill for adding complexity. After mulling over everything for months, I arrived at a realization. Despite the pain they've caused me, they remain my parents. This doesn't mean instant forgiveness or denial of past events. It simply signifies that I couldn't ignore the image of them in distress with no home and little hope. Despite my initial inclination to detach completely, the prospect of completely walking away felt amiss. Thus, after extensive internal deliberation, I resolved to intervene, not to solve their issues, but to provide them with an opportunity to mend their own lives. I set a clear boundary for myself. This wasn't about playing the hero or making a statement. It was about establishing limits and doing what I believed to be just. Several days ago, I drove to the cramped apartment where my parents resided post the loss of their house. I hadn't informed them of my visit, uncertain of the reception. When my knock was answered by my mom, she appeared weary and aged. I stepped inside the apartment, noticing how tired my mother looked and how run down the place appeared. Her eyes widened upon seeing me. "Ethan, you came?" she whispered. "Yeah," I replied, glancing around at the small, cluttered, and depressing space. My father sat on the couch, shuffling through papers. He looked up at the sound of my voice. "Ethan," he gruffly greeted, standing up. "What are you doing here?" I took a deep breath, looking between them both. "I've been reflecting on everything, and I've made a decision to help. Not out of obligation, but because I genuinely want to," I explained. My dad's face showed confusion while my mom's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, you don't need to do this. We don't deserve it," she said. "You're right," I acknowledged bluntly. "But that's not the point. I'm not here to dwell on the past. I want to offer you a chance to start fresh. No strings attached, no guilt trips, just a clean slate." My father, sitting back heavily, ran a hand through his hair. "How? He asked after a moment of silence. "I'll assist with your immediate needs," I replied before the sentence trailed off. The couple agreed to temporary assistance with EBT's rent and basic bills, but the responsibility to get back on track was on them. After reviewing their finances, it became evident that they were deeply trapped in credit card debt, overdue bills, and the aftermath of a lawsuit. I crafted a budget with them, consolidated some smaller debts, and covered a few urgent bills to prevent disconnections. Despite the challenges and tense moments, I reminded myself that this was a short-term solution. Encouraging accountability, I guided them towards taking charge of their futures. "Ward, this is the final time I will be assisting you," I declared firmly. "After this, you will need to handle things on your own." They both nodded in understanding, and for once I felt they truly comprehended. The most challenging aspect was confronting my own emotions every time I provided them with financial assistance or sat down to help them solve a problem. Part of me questioned if I was being foolish, setting myself up to be taken advantage of once more. Yet another part of me believed that by helping them, I was finally closing the chapter on years of pain and resentment. This wasn't about rectifying the past. It was about demonstrating to myself that I could transcend it. It has been a week since I intervened, and there are signs of progress. My parents have begun seeking part-time employment, and they are taking budgeting seriously. I even established an online bill payment system to streamline things for them. While everything is not perfect at the moment, as there is still a considerable history between us, trust will need time to be rebuilt. Nonetheless, for the first time in a while, I am hopeful that we are moving in the right direction. I sense progress rather than stagnation in our situation. I am tentatively hopeful, yet I remain steadfast in maintaining my boundaries. Should they regress to their previous behavior, I will not hesitate to disengage once more. However, at the moment, I am open to granting them this final opportunity. Thank you for your support, Reddit. I will keep you updated on the outcome. Keeping my fingers crossed.